But some Jewish people want to build a third Jewish temple.
Opening the door to the building of the third Jewish temple.
For ages, the concept of a third temple in Jerusalem has inspired heated discussion, eliciting strong emotions and opposing viewpoints. Some regard it as the unavoidable fulfilment of ancient prophecy, a heavenly promise linked to the destiny of Israel itself. To them, the temple represents the future, a physical building poised to rise again. Others disagree, thinking that the third temple is more about spiritual awakening than stone and mortar, a fresh link between God and his people. Then there are many who see it as a symbol, a source of inspiration for their religion and everyday life. But here is when things take a turn. Whispers are circulating and allegations emerge, implying that building has already started. Is there any truth to this? If so, what does this signify for the world? The answers may undermine the foundations of history itself. The concept of a third temple in Jerusalem is one of the most contentious and divisive issues in biblical prophecy. Some consider it entirely symbolic, reflecting a spiritual covenant rather than a physical structure. To them, Christ has replaced the temple, and his resurrection represents its restoration. But others point to scriptures, like the prophecy in Jeremiah, that speak of a time when the Messiah will rule from Jerusalem and a new temple will stand, complete with the Levite priesthood. If this is correct, the issue is not whether the third temple will rise, but when. Is there any actual push to make this a reality? Since 1987, the temple movement has advocated for its construction, increasing momentum over time. While many Israelis live secular lifestyles, Orthodox Jewish leaders are the major force behind this endeavor. However, they do not consider it as just a building job. Rather, it is a highly spiritual enterprise that must be completed with precision and in accordance with stringent religious discipline. That is why they have resurrected the Sanhedrin, an ancient religious council charged with regulating temple affairs. What is their goal? To guarantee that the third temple is restored precisely as tradition requires. But is this really happening? Is this simply wishful thinking? To understand where we are now, we must travel back in time, to the first two temples that shaped Israel's history. Centuries ago, the heart of Jerusalem was alive with the presence of a majestic temple, a site where heaven and earth seemed to meet. King David had a vision that inspired the construction of the first temple. He envisioned erecting a home for God, a holy location beyond anything the world had ever seen. But God has other intentions. David received assurance that his son would be the one to build it. So when Solomon ascended to the throne, he constructed the fabled temple on Mount Moriah, establishing a sanctuary of worship that would last for over 4 centuries. But the elegance lasted just a brief time. In 586 BC, the Babylonians destroyed it, sending the Jewish inhabitants into exile. They reappeared 70 years later, just as promised. They reconstructed their holy temple per King Cyrus's edict, albeit it was just a ghost of its former self. King Herod extended and lavishly rebuilt it throughout time, transforming it into one of the most stunning temples in ancient history. This was the temple that existed during Jesus' time. However, even its splendor could not save it. In 70 AD, Roman armies attacked Jerusalem, destroying the temple stone by stone. Since then, no Jewish temple has existed atop the mount. So why is this important now? This is significant because some individuals believe that history has not yet come to an end. To Orthodox Jews, the third temple is more than simply a notion. It is a vital part of salvation. They feel that without it, the Jews would never be able to fully realize their spiritual potential. Gershon Solomon, the founder of the Temple Mount Faithful, is one of the movement's most vocal supporters. He's committed his life to seeing the temple rebuilt, conducting demonstrations and rallies, and urging the Israeli people to reclaim the site. For him, the temple is more than simply a monument. It represents Israel's faith and destiny. However, not everyone agrees. Even within Judaism, there is division. Some devout Jews believe that religion should manifest itself in everyday life, not in a physical temple. They have adopted a more symbolic understanding of prophecy, claiming that the temple's function has evolved throughout time. Then there's the political reality. Muslims control the Temple Mount, home to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Any effort to reconstruct the temple would result in worldwide uproar, maybe even war. Despite these difficulties, the movement becomes stronger. Jewish leaders advocating for the temple's restoration contend that without it, something essential is missing, not just for Israel, but for the whole globe. They assert that the heavenly presence, which once filled the temple, will remain absent until its restoration. This idea is why many people continue to wonder, what does the Bible truly say about the third temple? Prophecies in Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelation all point to a future temple. The book of Daniel describes a time when sacrifices would cease, followed by a period of misery. Scholars have debated whether this prophecy has already been fulfilled, with some pointing to Antiochus Epiphanes, the notorious monarch who desecrated the Second Temple by erecting an altar to Zeus. His acts were seen as an unfathomable abomination, defiling the temple in the worst conceivable manner. Others, however, think Daniel's words predict a future event, a time when another temple will be built only to be insulted before the end of the world. Now, what do we do with a question that won't go away? The Bible is full of predictions about the end of the world. One of the most interesting is about what will happen to the Jewish temple. In 70 AD, the Romans may have destroyed it, but Jesus said in Matthew 24 that wasn't the end of something. He talked about a time when an abomination of desolation would be in a holy place. It would be something so immoral that it would mark the start of the end times. The book of Daniel describes a future without daily offerings and an evil spirit in the temple. But there's a catch. Jews haven't made sacrifices in hundreds of years. To fulfill this promise, they must return and face another setback. That's the reason for the Third Temple movement. It's not just about custom or history. Many see it as a crucial step towards the end of the world. And for people who think that Bible prophecy is coming true, the important question is not whether the Third Temple will rise, but when. The idea gets even stronger with Ezekiel's vision. In chapter 40, he goes into amazing detail about a future temple, including its size, gardens, and even a strange river that flows from the base of the temple, which has never been seen in a temple before. Some people thought Ezekiel was only talking about Solomon's temple or Herod's big changes to the Second Temple. The plans don't match, though. Many people think that the fact that this temple is different shows that a third temple still needs to be built. And the time, that makes it even more appealing. Ezekiel's promise ties Israel's reunification to the end of the world. This is when God's presence returns in full force. People even say that healing waters are coming out of the building, which is a sign that God is fixing things. It's not just possible that the Third Temple will happen if this promise comes true, but this is where things get tricky. This is not how the New Testament sees things. It doesn't talk about a house. Instead, it talks about God's people as the real temple. Before the second house even came down, Paul told the Corinthians that they were God's house and that His Spirit lived in them. In Ephesians, he elaborated further, stating that Christians were transforming into a sacred sanctuary. At this point of view, the real temple is not made of stone. It is the body of Christ, which means that God lives inside each person. Does that mean we don't need a third temple? Some say yes, saying that God is more than physical things. Conversely, others assert that biblical prophecy alludes to a tangible temple that requires reconstruction prior to the conclusion of history. Fires erupted, tremors rocked the land, and labor came to an end. Some interpreted it as divine intervention, proving that the temple's construction could not begin until the appointed time. The Jews thereafter reclaimed sovereignty over Jerusalem from Persian authorities in the early 600s and resumed construction. However, their efforts were short-lived. Before they could complete, the Byzantines recaptured the city, crushed their progress, and left the place in ruins. What about today? The struggle over the Temple Mount is fiercer than ever. International leaders have rejected Israel's claim to the site, and Israel rigorously circumscribes Jewish prayer on the Mount. Islamic officials not only govern the location, but also deny that a Jewish temple ever existed there. Groups such as the Women in Black aggressively monitor Jewish activities, ensuring that no religious events occur, and soaring above it all is the Dome of the Rock, one of Islam's holiest shrines, built exactly on the location of the Jewish Holy of Holies. The most significant difficulty is location. The Temple Mount is the world's most contentious real estate. Where might the construction of a new temple take place? Will it replace the Dome of the Rock? Stand by it? The political and theological consequences would be unparalleled. Despite all the challenges, the rebuilding effort has persevered. In fact, it's gaining traction. The current Sanhedrin, which consists of Jewish intellectuals and religious authorities, has already set the basis. They've planned future temple rituals so that everything is ready when the time comes. One of their initiatives is the Temple Forest, which is intended to furnish the wood required for sacrifices. While many people identify temple offerings with animals, the truth is that a huge percentage of sacrifices used agricultural produce. And then there is the Red Heifer Project. Rabbi Richman, a leading player in the temple movement, is attempting to return the precious red heifer to Israel. According to Jewish law, its ashes, when combined with water, are required to cleanse anybody who enters the temple. The first and second temples used only 9 red heifers, and Jewish legend predicts that the Messiah will prepare the 10th. Israeli ranchers are adopting innovative breeding procedures, guided by the Temple Institute, to guarantee one is accessible. They have inserted embryos from Red Angus cattle, which originated in North America, into Israeli cows in an effort to develop a pure red heifer born on Israeli territory. If successful, it will be the first in nearly 2,000 years. Meanwhile, the temple movement is not just preparing animals and supplies. They are teaching the Kohanim, or priestly class, the rights and responsibilities of temple service. Regular reenactments of ancient rites ensure their readiness when the time arrives. They have even designed a completely working altar that can be quickly dismantled and rebuilt on the Temple Mount. If they were granted permission, the sacrifices might begin practically soon. So where does all of this lead? Despite the challenges, political, theological, and logistical, the movement for the Third Temple is stronger than ever. For some, it is a question of national and religious identity. Others see it as the fulfillment of prophecy, the last step before the end of days. Furthermore, the Temple Institute has resurrected a centuries-old technology. The Temple Institute has restored the production of biblical crimson, a dye with strong roots in ancient rites. This dye colored the high priest's clothes and the enormous curtain that originally divided the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, and even contributed to the hallowed combination of the red heifer's ashes. What is the key? The key lies in a tiny organism known as the Tola Shani, also referred to as the crimson worm. Professor Zohar Amar of Bar Ilan University made the discovery, proving that the eggs of this microscopic worm, which may still be found in contemporary Israel, can reproduce the precise red color employed in ancient times. This finding is just one piece of a much bigger jigsaw, one that goes directly to the Temple Mount. However, here is where things get difficult. According to Israel's Supreme Court, The Temple Mount is a political battleground rather than a legal one. Their verdict on development and excavation in the region made one thing clear: courts cannot make such decisions. It is a subject for political leaders. The remark was more than simply about bureaucracy. It acknowledged the heated character of the dispute. The Temple Mount is more than simply an archaeological site. It is a symbol of national identity, religion, and history entwined in geopolitics. This decision is especially significant for individuals who believe in biblical prophecy. The book of Daniel, notably the prophecy of the 70th week, describes a governmental leader who would enter into a deceitful relationship with Israel, the Antichrist, as defined in Revelation. Some think that this eventual accord will clear the way for the building of the third temple. The pieces of the jigsaw are fitting into place, but one question remains: how could this have happened? One possibility: international mediation. According to academic research of Temple Mount politics, an international coalition, perhaps including UNESCO, NATO, the Arab League, and major global powers such as the United States, Russia, and the European Union, could serve as mediators. If such a combination can ensure religious harmony, it may be enough to advance a new legislative framework for the site. This leads us to another enigma, one that has captivated historians, theologians, and treasure seekers for decades. Could the Ark of the Covenant still be buried under the dome of the rock? Is it lost to history forever? What are your thoughts? Share your opinions in the comments section below.